Hello everyone, I'm Xiaogang. Okay, let's wait a bit before writing the swap, because the swap design requires dragging and dropping, and we still need to add a bit more. We already have this equipment and the drag and drop equipment here, so let's check first. We should be able to compile successfully now. There shouldn't be any issues. Then let's see if we have instantiated this component on our character. Okay, we haven't instantiated it yet. Now let's instantiate this component. And note here, actually, these components, you need to instantiate them based on the situation, because there are some monsters in your scene. Some monsters, and also some NPC, CX, etc. They might not need this component, so you should instantiate these components. You might need to move it to this. On player state, or on player control. Everyone should keep this in mind for these places, because this component itself has network synchronization. It will increase your consumption, okay? Put it inside. Then here we need to do a forward declaration. Okay, after the forward declaration is done, we still follow the concept to provide a method to get such a component. Okay, change the name here. Okay, then next we go to our constructor to create this component. It seems something is written wrong here. This is pasted from the previous step. I forgot to delete this, but this should be in the constructor. It is enabled by default, so it should be fine. Avoid missing anything, because if you miss something, problems may occur. Then we copy this and enable it. And here, we might need to include the header file. Okay, now we have a warehouse component. Next, let's write the panel for our warehouse component, so we can test it later. Yes, we won't do the drag and drop within the equipment slot for now, nor the drag and drop between equipment and backpack. Okay, so let's write the slot first. The approach for the slot is actually the same. It's relatively simple. First include the header file. Here we just need to include slot base. Then include our reflection file. Then, at this point, inherit our slot base. Then here, we have a drag and drop display icon. This writing style is very similar to this writing style, more or less the same. Then after having this icon, we need a constructor function here. Okay, then we implement this constructor function. Good, the constructor here has already been templated. Good, let's continue writing. Then, because of our slot, we need to correspond to which index it is in the panel. Oh, it has an equip ID. This is the slot ID. It is not the identifier of this equipment. When we click, we need to override this method. Okay. Then, this part is for dragging. Let's not write it for now. Let's delete it first. We'll write the dragging later. Good, so let's create this as well. In the constructor, we need to specify its current slot type. It is an equipment slot. When it is clicked, it should actually be the equipment in your equipment bar. When it is clicked, it should drag down this equipment. Then we give this piece of code, drag it over. After dragging it over, we get our Carter. Then after Carter, we should make it directly remove. In this method, we haven't written this method yet. Then we'll just write it here. Because this method needs to send an RPC method, we found it. Because you clicked on the client side, then you equip the gear. it must be done on the server side. Equip this gear, then sync it from the server side. So we found this place. Let me take a look. There should be an RPC here. Let's put it here. Then we find this component of our warehouse. For the warehouse component, we should use this method. Then it jumps back here. Right here. Okay, then we create its implementation at this point. We see they are created at the position we want. There might be a small issue here. Let's click 1. This is because RPC might not be able to recognize this location. It directly jumps to our root CPP file. We don't want it to directly jump to the root CTT file. We write it at this position. And then we are on the server, and we are using equipment here. So this place is equipment. The equipment method will do. Okay, like this. This is because we wrote the root CPP method. Actually, we don't need to worry about it. Whether we click yes or no, it doesn't matter. It's fine if we click yes, because it generated this method for you here. This method actually shouldn't be generated in this position. We can delete it. It's okay. We'll regenerate it later. Just let it override, okay? So, after this method is ready, we go back to our slot here. Then it's done here. This is our equipment slot. Then in our panel here, we create it. For this panel, first we include this header file. Then we include this minimized dependency of ours. Then similarly, we need to include some related components of ours. Then the reflection file, then forward declarations. Then, actually, 12. This writing style is the same as our invent pedal, you see, right here. Then we need to prepare a container. This container needs to be bound in Blueprint. Let it prepare a container. We can add some elements inside it. Then this needs to be configured, which specific slot we are using. Decouple our equipment slots from the actual implementation. And here are two constructors. That is when hooking and suction hooking. Meanwhile, prepare a method here to do some related bindings. Okay, so after writing this, we come to our point translator. Then on the point translator, we first include the input key. I'll just paste it directly. First, our own input key. As for this warehouse key, we probably don't need to include it, because our input key already includes it. There's a duplicate here. No, let's just leave it here. For now, okay, so in the constructor, how do we do it? First, let's call our constructor. Make sure to call it. If you don't call it, it will make debugging particularly troublesome. When a UI bug occurs, you might spend a long time debugging only to find it's because you didn't call it. Then let's bind this method properly. Okay, let's take a look at this part. This is usually misspelled. Get our equipment component. Then get this delegate. We just need to bind it. Okay, once the binding is complete, then the first time we do this, we need to create these elements inside. So when we update for the first time, we create them like this. We essentially create 6 child elements and just put them in. Okay. There's nothing much to explain here. It's your first time. When you first enter, it's definitely 0. Then you initialize it. Okay, next. When it comes to destruction, we mainly just need to remove this binding. Then when you create it, remember to copy this ID into the prefab, so it knows which slot corresponds to which. Okay, note that these are all bound to this client. And then this last method, is when it receives the callback. We can prepare a method to let it actively request the server data. For example, when you are constructing here, you might miss the timing of its property synchronization, so this part might not execute. Then you should be inside the equipment here. Let's see if we have written this method. It should be in equipment. We have a method to let it go. For something like this method, let it make a request. This quick hour underhit. Also like this method. When we run to this point, we pass this array. Next is manual RPC. Let it update with him. In our Carter base, I'll come back. We should have an RFC called cosale.dam. This data.info, it is the information of the downloaded repository. Actually, so we can actually expand it here. Let's extend it. Let's switch it back. Then we directly click. You can see this is the downloaded info. We'll just let this part also 称的 the equipment info as well. But it's better to write them separately. It doesn't matter. It's just a matter of personal preference. Let's call it call sour download info. Okay, there is no such method now, right? Then we just need to implement this method. This method of ours, we write it in this position. Then here we will right here call server info. Then we mainly just needed to execute this method and pass ourselves in. This is essentially first calling a server RPC, then calling a client RPC. Here it will execute this. This then jumps to the client side. Here, okay, let's go back to our panel. Back to our panel. When it is hooked at this point, if it has already been done, we actually, if we bind it properly here, we can call a method here. Let me bring it onto this layer. After we have it initialize this element, then bind the corresponding method and have it actively send this update information once. Then we come to this place. When our equipment changes, then this value here must be greater than 0, right? We forgot to change the name here. Let's change the name. Then we just need to iterate, do a for loop iteration. Process these corresponding elements. Just take the equipment data synchronized from the server. We can map it onto our equipment UI. Okay, we'll just directly take the pipe. Actually, this part can be optimized. You can do some optimization on it. Because if you use the raw data, we can essentially do an encoding and decoding process to make the transmission size smaller. So when we have data, once it's external, then we update this icon image and set visibility to visible. When we have no data, we just hide it. Okay, basically, this is how we have written the basic UI. Then let's look at the many errors here, right? Let's check these errors. This should be related to a certain version. This error is probably due to not including the header file, but it might actually be that the real error is not here, because we didn't have this error before, right? Let's compile again. This part might need help. It seems this component is also needed. This issue is quite common because it might not show an error when you write it now, but it will show an error when you package it. That's also normal. It will prompt you that a file was not found in this location. Let's check it again now. This place also reported an error. Here, what we are converting is the scatter, then the colleague key here also needs to be handled. Okay, so basically, this should be fine now. In the next lesson, we will configure the related resources.